Hello, I own a 2022 KTM 500 EXC-F. I'm 63 years old, been riding for about 50 years. With age comes a little bit of sensitivity to my wrists. I've decided that I'm going to work on these WP Xplor forks, try to improve my suspension and hopefully extend my riding life. And this is going to be a little bit of a long video because I'm going to get into a lot of details. I'm a novice and this is made for novices, so hopefully I won't miss anything, and I hope you enjoy it. So this is the WP Xplor fork. This is the right-hand fork, the side without the brake rotor and that. And the way these forks work and the deficiency in them is that they are actually independent of each other. There's one fork that handles rebound, and that's this fork on the right, and your left fork with your brake rotor would be your compression fork. By replacing the cartridges in these with the MX Tech Lucky cartridge system, I'm going to essentially create a true open cartridge fork on both sides with rebound and adjustment on both forks. This should give me a lot more adjustability, a plusher ride, and hopefully more enjoyable ride. I purchased my Lucky cartridges from Slaven's Racing. The reason I did that is because Jeff Slaven is kind of up there in my age bracket, does a lot of riding like I do, and he has tailored his shim stack for these for my kind of riding. You can get two different shim stacks from Slaven's. The one that this comes with is the Mule, but it ships also with the Mule Do-It-All stack. If you want to go out and race, do some desert racing or some whoops and stuff, you could use those in place of the stock system that he ships. You could buy these directly from MX Tech and they will custom tune them for you, or send you to another tuner and you can have your shim stack custom tuned. These are, I should say, they also come with the spring. My bike has never been sprung for my weight, so included in the price, which is, I think, right about $1,100 for both cartridges and both springs. I'm respringing mine for my correct weight. You'll notice that there are some shims here, and the kit comes with multiple shims. And these shims are put together. There's several of them. They're used to set your compression or your preload on your spring. And that's the first thing you've got to do is set up that preload. I'm going to go ahead and set this out of the way for a moment while we go ahead and do that preload. All right, the tools that we're going to use today are going to be my trusty Tusk wrench for the Xplor fork top cap. I also purchased from MX Tech, or actually from Slaven's, the special wrench for the top of the MX Tech cap. And we got a 3/8" drive ratchet. I've got a 17, actually a 15 socket, a 19 wrench, a 17 wrench, a 15 wrench, a set of pliers, and my homemade oil level setting kit. And so the cartridge comes along with the spring, as mentioned earlier, and we need to set the preload on the spring, and I'm going to show you how I do that. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. The kit comes with these shims. I'm going to hold these up for the camera, and they're various thicknesses. I've already done this once, so I know which two shims, but the way I did it, just so you follow along, is I placed one shim just to take up a little bit of the slack, not enough to actually set the preload. And you take the spring, place it, put it in place. Helps if you have the rod out, down on the shim there. By the way, the shims that you're going to use go to the bottom of the spring. I'm going to take a moment and tell you about this here, because the kit comes from Slaven's with this cap here, and this cap only has the rebound key in it, and there's no other adjustment here. You got your vent. I found out after purchasing the kit that actually from Slaven's, young gentleman there that's quite helpful, that there is another cap that you can purchase for this cartridge kit that actually has a built-in preload adjuster in it. And if you go with the standard, it comes with the kit in the $1,100. These are, I think, another $185 for the pair. I didn't mind spending that. I would like to have that adjustability. But there's a difference in your preload if you buy the standard kit with the non-adjustable cap here. With this version, you want to set your preload to somewhere between 5 and 8 millimeters, as I gather, and do a little research on that for your type of riding and that. And it's the same process, but with the preloaded adjusting cap, I'm only going to set it to about 3 millimeters, maybe 4 millimeters. So what you do is you put a shim on there. I will take the cap, and I'm actually going to use the original cap, and I'll tell you why. The new caps have that low friction coating on this adjuster and down in the threads, and that reduced the thread size. And what that does is makes it a little tighter to thread onto the actual rod. And for this stage here, I don't want to mess with that, so I'm going to take off the shim. I don't need that. I'm going to place this onto the rod end, being careful not to cross thread. See how easy that went on there? I'm going to rotate the spring, and I did screw up there. I'm going to have to back up a little bit because I do need the shim there in order for this to work properly, because I need to have something for the spring to ride against there too. So there we go. All right, so I can see the spring end there, the spring end there. I'm going to take my ruler, and this is in millimeters. I'm going to place it to the end of the spring, and you can put something there. I have a caliper. This helps. Just give yourself a square edge so that I'm against the spring, and I have something to put the ruler against. I'm going to eye it though. I put it there. I go down to the other end, and I'm measuring about, let's see, you don't need to know the total, you just need to know the fraction here. And I'm measuring about 52 to 53 millimeters. So actually it's 452, 453 millimeters. So for my setup, I want to put in 3 to 4 millimeters, so I want about 48 millimeters on that measurement. So what I would do is I take my calipers and I measure these shims until I find the correct shim to add to this lower stack to do that. And since I did that in advance, you didn't need to see that. This is the shim that I'm going to use. Put that on there. There is this little plastic washer here, by the way. And I'm going to put the spring back on. And this time I'm going to go ahead and use the adjustable one. I'm going to hold the rod. This way you see the difference here. All right, we go ahead and be careful with this again. It's a little stiffer. I should point this out so we don't forget it. There's a little nylon washer. It's pretty well stuck in this one, but there's a nylon washer in there that the spring will rest on. And that's flush with the cap. I'm going to put this on here, being careful not to cross thread it. And there we go. It's going into preload. And I'm going right down until it stops. Gentlemen at MX Tech told me that if the rod begins to turn, you can take a rag and place it within your plier jaws and gently hold the rod, and you can finish tightening it. It's not very tight, okay? And now I'm going to go ahead with my ruler again, and this time, because I have the adjustable cap, it provides me the flat edge to hold that against, and I'm looking for about 48. Yeah, I'm right at 48 millimeters. So my preload is somewhere between 3 and 4 millimeters, and this preload adjuster right there gives you 20 clicks of preload adjustment. And what I did was, before I put it together earlier, I took my caliper and I placed it on there with the depth gauge end, set it 0, and I turned it 5 clicks. I measured it. I got about 2.6 millimeters. I turned it another 5 clicks. I got 5.2. I turned it the full 20. I ended up with about 10 millimeters of additional preload adjustment. And I would do that on your setup too, just so that you know they're not all the same. And so you'll have a number. You'll know that with each click, you get a certain number of millimeters in your rebound setup. All right, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. These are hopefully, did a lot of research. They're going to work out for me and give me a much smoother ride and take a little burden off my wrists. This isn't the sales pitch on these, but I did want to show you that these have a very unique system in the end here. It's called a muck valve, and this is the anti-bottoming system. So it's a hydraulic system. It's a cup, and the little piston goes in there with the rod, and at the last end of the stroke, that piston will enter this cup, and the hydraulic force will reduce the travel speed and have a very soft bottom or anti-bottoming system in this fork. Very special system in this muck valve setup, or as it's called, a muck valve setup. Okay, I'm going to grab my fork, and I hope I'm not missing anything. One thing I didn't mention, I like to use this the red can of CRC brake cleaner for cleaning. It's sort of an old, almost like the dry cleaning fluid or a contact cleaner. It doesn't have toluene in it, methylene chloride, or anything that's going to melt paint and really damage your hands. So I use this to pre-clean things. And I also purchased from Slaven's the recommended, they called it blood fork oil, which is what MX Tech also recommends. All right, so I'm going to take my Xplor fork. I use a vise from a mill, standard like Bridgeport mill. It's a nice setup. It doesn't mar anything because it's perfectly square. And I use that to hold this while I break this end free. And this end already is free, but I'm going to check it. And there we go. It's not really stopping the tube from turning, but it gives me something to hold on to the fork. And as long as this is loose, which it is, I'm going to go ahead and loosen it from the vise. I want to get my little dump tub up here, and we're going to get ready for surgery. So I'm going to put some gloves on. No reason to be absorbing hydraulic oil through your skin pores. All right. I'm going to set this out of the way because we're not going to use that. These are spare shims. We're not going to be using those. We'll take our fork and we will remove the cap and drain the fork. I also ordered, by the way, the MX Tech shock. It's called the National Shock. It is an amazing system. Probably one of the best shocks, I think, available on the market. And I'm looking forward to putting that on. That's not arrived yet. I did get the spring. And we're going to pull the tube down, and then we'll go ahead and drain the oil. These forks only have about 40 hours on them. The bike's, well, I'm going to say 60 hours, I'm sorry, but I don't have much time to ride these days. We're getting ready to head up to Mancos, Colorado, though, for a month, and my wife actually rides a Husky FE350S with the Get ECU, thanks to Mike at Takomoto. And she's my wife is 120 pound, 5'6", and that little FE350 is faster than my 500 with that Get ECU. Doesn't have the torque, but boy, sure gets her around. We might do this on her bike if it works out well for me on this bike. I'm just pumping this to try to get as much oil out as I can. All right. Always have plenty of rags while I'm doing a job like this. And now I'm going to put that back in the vise. I don't really even need to tighten it, but you're going to need a what is it, a 17 millimeter hex tool. You can buy one by itself for about $9 on Amazon, or you can buy the whole set for $18. I chose to buy the whole set. And we're going to go ahead and pull this plug out. Now this plug with the new system is going to be replaced with a bottom valve for compression. Right now in these forks there are no bottom adjustments. There's only the top adjustment. Again, compression on one side and rebound on the other. And and it's pretty poor design in my opinion, and I think they were trying to save some money. The 2024s that have come out now are more a system like this, where you have a true dual fork design, where both forks share part of the load. In this design, one portion handles again the rebound, and one portion the compression. So you're putting a lot of work on one fork to do that job. By splitting it between the two, you can have a finer tune, if you will, is what I've read and discovered. All right, so there goes the oil coming out of there now. I'm going to go ahead, and this should pull right out. And more oil. I am going to make a mess here. I'm going to lift my fork out. Oop. And I'm going to try to level out and pour the rest of this in my little pan here. There we go. All right. And we're not going to be using any of this. This is completely replaced. The only thing I'm going to do is take my vent caps off of these eventually and put them on the new caps. I'm going to take this and move it out of the way for now. All right, a little clean up here. There we go. Now, I'm going to clean this out a little bit. They're really not dirty, but I'm going to clean them out a little bit, and I may not film this portion of it because you don't really need to see me do that. Let me look at it and see how clean this one is. My other one had a little bit of dirt. I did pre-clean these with a little bit of the brake cleaner, so they're not dirty, but just take a look. Everything looks pretty good. So I'm going to take my cleaner and I will spray the inside. Figure why not? If I've got it apart, I might as well make sure there's no contamination, no water in there. And that takes care of the smaller tube. You got to be careful here. You'll get to the rough part there. You want to only pull it out so far. And then I'll clean the upper portion. Alright. There we go. And now I'm going to go ahead, and I've got this piece of electrical plastic conduit. You can use a piece of PVC, whatever you like. I'm going to use it to swab with a clean rag the inside of the bore and dry out that brake cleaner. There we go. And then we'll just compress it back to bring it back out the other end. And there we go. And I don't honestly know if I can put this through here or not, but and that's about as far as I can go in that end. So I've got this compressed now, so I can shove it in this end here, and then we'll just push it back out from that end. Again, I'm just trying to make sure there's nothing in there, no contaminations from the old fork. Oil and the old cartridge. There we go. And that should go right down to the end. I can feel it. Pull my rod back out and then push the rag back out from the other end, and everything should be clean. Yeah, look at the dirt that came out of there. That's why I did that. Let me look at it. Yeah, looks really clean. I'm going to do the larger bore one more time. Just turn the rag inside out. what they say about cleanliness, right? There we go. Nice and clean. All right. I'm going to grab my air gun and blow that out just a little bit to make sure that the solvent has been removed. My compressor is not going to make it. A little bit more, there we go. All right. All right, so we have the fork all clean now. Sure you could figure out how to do that your own way. I am not going to put new seals or anything in this since it's essentially a brand new fork. Clean up the outside there. And let's see, we will get ready to load this. Now, because we're going to have to fill it with oil, I'm only going to use this cap to help me guide the cartridge into the fork. I'm going to remove the bottom valve, the base valve, with the muck valve in it very carefully, gently. There we go. And you'll see that hex shape that will mate with the corresponding hex shape down in the foot of the fork there. And I'll use my finger down at that end to guide that into place. I'm going to go ahead and drop this down a little bit so I have a little more control over it. There we go. And it went, I believe, right in. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at that. It is not quite in all the way. I'm going to lift it up. Again, you're just trying to get that hex. There it goes. I just felt it bottom out there. I don't even need to look at that. I can tell that. I'm going to take my muck valve and bottom valve and gently slide that in there. You want to be careful. It'll want to push this out. Be careful not to cross thread this. And there it is. I can feel it going in. And I believe this is my 15 millimeter. Yes, indeed. And I'll take my ratchet. The only torque spec they give you in the instructions is the torque spec for this top locking nut for the shaft to the lid, and I think it's very light. We'll read that off the instruction sheet a little later. And this is just snug. That's all it needs to be. Not much more than snug. Okay? All right. Got that out of the way. So, we are in position with our cartridge. Now what we're going to have to do is fill it with the oil and bleed it, and that's quite a process that we will show you here. It is easier to work with this rod if you can access it with your fingers. Holding the tube will not stop the rod from spinning. And once you put these on and off a couple of times, those threads actually loosen up, so I'm not having too much problem there. Now my shims are in there, remember that, and so I'm going to go ahead and remove my spring. The shims are in there, and I'm going to go ahead and fill it with oil. It's supposed to take around 600 milliliters. This is about 946, and there's other videos. Jeff Slaven does a great video on doing this, how to get this to bleed. It does take quite a bit of work. Again, we might choose to trim this down. You don't want to put the oil in between the lower tube and the upper tube. You want to make sure it just goes in all the lower tube. And I'm going to fill this all the way to the top. It's about a half an inch from the top. In this tube is going to be your control rod for your rebound. That's your valve at the base of this tube. And so when you push down on this, the oil can actually launch that out. So hold your finger there. And all I'm going to do is go up and down with this. And it's sucking that oil in. And I'm going to push it all the way down into the muck valve. You can feel that valve work. It's amazing. And I want to pull it back up all the way. Yep, you can feel the resistance of that muck valve. And it's still full of air. I'm going to go grab a wrench real quick. There's something that will help this process that I'll show you. All right, I've got my Allen wrenches, and really should have done this up front. But the compression valve, if we get the right size Allen wrench, we will screw that all the way in, and that helps the bleeding process. And this is where I'm going to there we go. So it looks like it's about a 4 millimeter. I'm turning it clockwise, and I can feel the detents. Now this is one of the details that you won't find anywhere in the instructions, is how far in. It says all the way in. Okay, well, I hit the last detent there, but then the valve turns more, and you don't want to overturn it. You'll damage the seat, possibly. So I'm going to go back out to that last detent there. So there's a detent there, and I can continue on about a quarter of a turn, but I'm going to leave it at the last detent. That's what I was instructed by a gentleman at MX Tech. And that should help us with our bleeding process. I'm going to pull this back out. Fill it back up. It's just the same process over and over. What seems to work the best is when I get that, get it down in that muck valve. Then you'll start to feel the air come out. If you do get oil down in between the two tubes, it's not a big deal. You just need to pull the top tube up out, and the wipers will wipe it back up, and it'll end up back in the inside tube. That's what happens when you're riding as well. This is where I think all the work takes place, is pushing that down into that muck valve. And now it's, you can see I've got resistance for about half of that stroke there. A lot of resistance at the bottom. Resistance, and then it breaks free. And when it's completely bled, it will no longer break free. And then we'll move on to the last step. There we go. That was solid the whole way. That is solid the whole way. I'm going to go ahead and add some oil. Now, when you set the oil level, it comes with an instruction sheet. And because of the kind of riding I do, I'm going to set my oil depth at about 120 millimeters. Racers might set it as high as 90 millimeters. And that's the distance from the top of the fork body here down to the oil. Of course, at 90 millimeters, you're going to have a really stiff ride, you know, for doing whoops and jumps and everything else. For trail riding, 120. Some people would say 110, but I'm going to go with Mr. Slaven's recommendation of 120. I can still hear oil or air bubbles coming out as I push this rod down. You can hear the oil bubble. I wish you could hear that. You might be able to with my microphone on my lapel, but This is a step that's critically important. Don't rush it, and don't stop short. I can hear the bubbles just bubbling out of that. The air. Time to add some more fluid. You can have almost the whole bottle in by the time you're done. After we suck it out with our leveling tool, we'll have about 300 milliliters of oil left in that bottle, meaning we leave about 600 milliliters in the fork. And I'm starting to lose the sound of the air bubbles, which is good. It's a little tiring on my hands and fingers. I'm out back of the barn today doing this because I've got my stainless steel welding table here that makes this really nice. There are other options out there, of course. You could revalve your forks, add a mid valve, things like that. I just felt for me and my research and the kind of riding I do that this Lucky cartridge was the best option for me. All right, I am no longer hearing any air. The oil is very low. So I'm going to yet again add a little oil. We will end up sucking most of this extra oil back out, but while we're bleeding them, we want to be sure that we bleed them good. Now, one thing that Mr. Slaven does, and I'm going to do this with the new cap as well. I just going to hold this up out and screw this on. You know, see how easy that goes on now. Now this black nut, you can see I can screw it down. It should be screwed clockwise all the way down to expose those threads on that shaft. And the cap will stop about 2 millimeters from the bottom, okay? And then we're going to pull this up so the two meet. Not a case of never the two shall meet. And I just want that O-ring to seat there. And I'm going to go ahead and exercise. Boy, it is really airlocked. I'm going to have to take the lid out to let air in. I'm just going to back it out a few threads to let that air in. There we go. See? Little detail there. I didn't know. And there's the air coming back out the top. I guess I could have taken the vent screw out. That would have done the same thing. I'm just exercising the fork. Make sure that we have indeed removed all of the air from the various chambers and nooks and crannies in the cartridge. I think we've done it. I'm going to go ahead and take the cap off. Again, you do have to hold the rod to do that. The scariest part for me because I don't want to drop it and have it fall down on the concrete and dent my $185 set of caps. All right. And it is indeed bled. All right, I'm going to put this is one of those details when you're doing the oil level. Put everything down in there, the shaft, the centering spline, and I'll take my little homemade syringe leveling system and stick that right there. This is nothing but a grommet. It's an electrical grommet for wiring going through a panel, piece of nylon tubing, and a syringe. One of those syringes with the pointed nipple on the end. And this will take a good bit because we do have extra oil in there. I'm going to keep the oil. There's no reason to throw it out. And we will do this until we get nothing but air in the syringe, and then we'll know that we're set at 120 millimeters for this particular setup. Your instruction sheet will actually tell you what they recommend based on your conversation with them on the phone. We're just about there. You can see that the grommet simply sets the depth of the hose. I measured the length of the hose to be 120 millimeters. That's how you get your level correct. A couple of more of these and we'll be done. Here we go, we're sucking air. We're almost there. And this is not rocket science, I suppose. If it's a couple of millimeters off, I don't know. I suppose some people would be able to tell the difference. I probably couldn't. And there we go. All right. Now I want to pull that back up. Take our spring. Remember the shims are down in there for setting our preload. And I'm not going to let that go, I don't think, unless it'll stay. Well, it does stay. So there we go. And of course the spring displaces oil, and you end up with a little more oil. All right, and then we'll take our lid. I'm going to go ahead and lift that up. Now, there goes my compressor. And there goes the preload, and I can see it's free right now. There's 0. And I can see the gap on the thread, and sure enough, I'm still going to put about 3. I do want to make sure that this time in particular I do get that snug against the shaft, so we are going to use our trusty pliers and rag. Hold that gently. And I'm watching the rod, and I actually want to see the rod slip in the rag. There we go. It's tight, but I don't want to hold the pliers so tight that they gall the rod or scratch the rod. And there we have it. And now we're going to take our wrenches, and I'm going to use the 17 socket on top for the rebound adjustment. And I should have said this earlier on, this rebound adjustment is all the way out when you do all this. You want it out and onto the first click. Just like when you're tightening up the compression valve for the operation of degassing or bleeding, you want to turn to the first notch. And I think this is a 17, I'm sorry. 17 and 19. And this does not get torqued tight at all. I think you can finger tighten this nut. Let me see if I can show you this nut real close. You can see that nut right there, and it spins its finger until it's up against the bottom of the cap, and then you put your wrench on it and your socket on the top, and you just snug it. That's all it is. All right, and that fork and lucky cartridge is complete. Go ahead and tighten that up. Your instructions will come with the settings on what your clicker should be set at to begin with, and I'm not going to tighten this down all the way until I get it in the bike, but snug there. And let's see, Set that there. And again, each kit will come with the instructions, and within the instructions you'll have a sheet for your setup, and for the compression 14, for the rebound 12. And there you see the oil level, 120 millimeters. Gives my spring rate, gives me what my preload should have been, 5 to 8 millimeters if I would have used the standard cap. You don't want to go any less than 3 millimeters, by the way. You really want to be closer to 4 millimeters on that preload with the pre-adjustable or the readjustable cap. All right, and I've already forgotten because I'm an old guy, sort of. 14 on compression, 12 on rebound. So your compression is your lower one. So rebound is 12. And so I'm going to go all the way in. There's the last click right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And of course, this is just a starting point. This one's already in. So on this one, we're going to go 14 out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. One thing you'll notice with the Lucky cartridges is that one click will make a very big difference in the feel of your fork. So be careful with that. I'm looking at this. I've got about 300 milliliters left, which is about what it's supposed to take. 946 minus 300 would be 646 milliliters. And that's it. I'm going to put these on the bike. A couple days from now, I'll get my National Shock, and we'll try that out, and hopefully have a bike I can ride for the next 5 or 10 years. Thanks for watching. If you have any comments, if I did anything wrong, please let me know in the comments below. I'm not a YouTuber, but I do hope that this is helpful for all of you.